Okay, thank you for joining us and welcome to another edition of a Google Plus Hangout with Channels Beam. And today we're looking at child and women molestation. Sometime last year, the United Nations, through UNICEF, released the statistics where it talked about the number of kids being molested around Nigeria. But then, just to follow up on that, we've been joined by Mariam Noshi, who joins us from France, Toulouse, precisely. Thanks for joining on the program.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And we also have Indikato, who joins us from Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory. Indy, it's a pleasure to have you as well on the program.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, let's just cutting now. Let's begin with the definition of molestation. Indy.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. If you can hear me, to get off. Let's begin with the definition of molestation.
Well, I mean, molestation is, in the simplest form, accessing a person's body without permission, without that person's permission. And of course, when it comes to underage children, whether or not touching a person in a sexual manner without the person's permission. And keep in mind that children are not old enough to consent for such things. So consent with children does not matter. Touching them in a sexual manner is molestation.
Indeed, it is. But what about for adults? I mean, because we've seen many cases here and there.
Yes, with adults, it has to do with consent. Any manner of sexual advances or touch or anything that somebody has not consented to, male or female, is considered molestation. And these days, because of how we are getting to unlearn and learn and unlearn new things, it is now obvious that, look, there are certain means of consent. So don't think because somebody is quiet, the person has consented to. Don't think because you're in a position of power and you ask somebody to do this. And the person, of course, because of your position of power, feels the pressure to consent. Doesn't mean that was voluntary. There is verbal and non-verbal. So these are a lot of things we're putting into the conversation now with respect to adults, because these lines are being blurred daily.
All right. I'll come back to you in a bit, but Mariam, let me come back to you. Let me come to you rather. Let's look at. I mean, there are patterns and trends, of such occurrences. Can you go through some of these for us?
I mean, in terms of molestation, there are so many things that I think are common. I mean, we're recently hearing a lot about a teacher who molested a child who isn't even old enough to properly talk or know what's going on. It's something that happens, I think, to many people, and in many instances, it happens with people that they know. Perhaps someone close to the family, someone close to them, someone who knows them, someone in a position of power, like Indy mentioned, where people are being touched or addressed sexually in an inappropriate way. And I think one of the common ones we've seen these days are children being molested by people who are supposed to be close to them, people who are supposed to be close to their family. And for me, that's one of the scariest ones.
Oh yeah, so that's actually one of the issues that people have actually raised. The issue of people maybe having those close to them. But let's look at reporting such cases. It is also a record that people find it difficult to come out. How do we go past this issue of coming out, at least to report those who are close to us or close to children who are victims of such molestations?
Okay, so what I think is that for children, parents, and anybody who's in charge of any small child, we need to have open conversations, not just with these kids, but amongst ourselves in the society. There's a lot of stigma that comes with people who are able to say, I was molested, or even for children, people tend to blame the victim, which is wrong. People tend to blame different circumstances as opposed to the person who actually committed the act of molestation. As a society, we need to accept that it's wrong. We need to have strong laws. We need to have strong law enforcement that deals with such situations. And then we need to have the conversations. We need to stop pretending that it's not happening with children, with young women, with even men, because there's a stigma that also comes with a man saying that he was molested. It needs to be spoken about. People need to stop blaming victims. The stigma needs to go away, and people should have a place where they can go to freely say this happened to me, and for them to know that there will be consequences for the person who committed the act.
All right. I mean, talking about men, being molested, like you just made mention of. I mean, some even just feel that it just never happens to men.
That's not true, because men are also, there are young boys, there are men as well, mature men, who are put in positions where they don't want those advances. And as Indy mentioned, as long as the person doesn't want the advance, the person did not give you the consent, the person is below the age of consent, whether it's a man or a woman, these things happen. And, there are men that it happens to, but they are unable to come out and say it because society laughs at it, or society looks at it like, okay, you're not a man, or that all men want, any kind of sexual advance, which is not true. I think that men have the right to say no to sexual advances as well. And everybody deserves to be protected. So it does happen, and we need to take out the stigma, and men should be able to say as well what they've experienced.
Very well. Andy, let me come to you now, looking at the issue of, prosecution and what have you. What laws do we have, protecting those who face such issues?
Well, it's a lot of the times, respect to Nigeria, it's not just about the laws being there, it's the implementation of the laws. Who is there to make sure that people are being prosecuted for this? You would see these cases end up in court, and it's a whole lot of drama. And at the end of the day, these people get away with it. Our judicial system, of course, is very flawed, and we have to address that too. I would want to refer to, the steps. The Lagos state government is actually being very, very proactive in making sure that, look, the laws are there, yes, but there should be proper steps put in place to make sure that these laws are not just, just there on paper and not implemented, not carried out by somebody. There are no repercussions at the end of the day. So it's not just about the laws. Our laws are there for these things, but are they being put? No. If we follow what Lagos state government is doing with DSVRT, that's the domestic violence thing, and a lot of other things they put in place, steeper punishments for rape and molestation and all that, and following it up with government agencies to make sure that people are protected, then we know that, okay, we can discuss the legal arm of this. But right now there's not much to do with actually implementing these laws. And we have that rapist. Keep in mind that the alleged Unilag rapist that was caught recently has had this case for so many years. So I was reading up on him, and on Facebook I saw since 2015 he had a case. He raped a girl with allegedly raped a girl, a sickle cell patient, and that case, with all the brutality and all the facts with that case, he just wasn't locked up. And so he was left to run free and continue serial raping people. And here we are. So again, it's not just with the law being there. The law was there, but the people meant to, carry out these laws, meant to ensure our safety, did not think that this was a serious case enough to lock this person up without bail. So these are the issues. We also have to look at a register for sexual offenders, and all these things are not there. These are the things that ensure that the law is taken seriously. And well, we're seeing it in one state. Here's hoping that other places in Nigeria enact these laws or put these laws in proper place.
Does it take commitment, or does it take?
Yes, it takes commitment. It takes a government deciding to prioritize these things. And when the government decides that they're going to prioritize a certain thing, you see how far they're willing to go with it. Our governments do not, most governments, state governments in Nigeria do not prioritize these things. It is what it is. And here we are seeing, the repercussions or the effects of it. A lot of people take these things lightly too. You talk about these things. As somebody actually had the guts to come on social media to say that a 3-year-old may have been lying. This you know, that who's going to take the testimony of a 3-year-old over the child's molester? This is a child that took the time to describe what that, you know, older person was doing to her. And so let's come back to the fact that, look, if over the years our laws are not taken seriously enough, and these things allow what I like to term a rape culture to grow in any society, in any community, that's what we'd have now. Nobody's committed to these things in this state, or not enough people are committed to these things in Nigeria as a whole.
All right, let me just bring in the comment from someone who is watching, you know, by watching this conversation via our YouTube stream. Isioma Christian Moka, and he says, I don't know if it's a he or a she. Isioma seems to be like a unisex name, but the comment is saying that most children report, but their parents don't believe.
Yes. I permit me to use a personal example. Growing up, and I'm pretty sure many girls like myself, especially within Nigeria, have experienced this. You report, there were repercussions for us reporting back then. This person touched me. You could get beaten for being in a position to be touched by the person. This person touched me. Shoo, you want to spoil, don't, especially if it's a family member. And most times it's people who know you, who can access you and do these things to you. And so your family or your parents tend to put the person's position in society above your safety, their relationship over the years with the person above your safety. This happens to a lot of children to this day. And then there's the one that they just outrightly do not believe the child. This child is stubborn, so this child should not believe, or you're too small to understand, shut up. And let's also look at, you know, the implication on that, or on the psyche of the child. It means that going forward, many things will happen, and that child will not be able to report, from rape to many other things. And knowing that your first place of safety will not protect you, and that's your immediate family or your parents, that's very problematic.
It is indeed problematic. But Mariam, do you think that happened? I mean, that's a personal. I mean, she just gave us a personal. But from your own perspective, I mean, what do you have to say about, you know, kids reporting and then parents not believing? How do you strike that balance, you know, where your kid will even be free enough? Because some also bring about the issue that some children are scared to even relate with their parents in terms of telling them what they went through, maybe in school or at home with uncles and guardians. You know, how do you strike that balance?
So I'm looking at you know, the 3-year-old who came forward to say that she probably didn't even know what she was talking about. She had an experience and she said, this is what happened to me. And as everybody, like, basically the world is looking right now, and people are still trying to find a way to say this child is lying. And that's one of the problems for somebody who might be experiencing this, and they turn and see what's going on in the media, in the society, the conversations going on around them. And anybody who comes forward is not believed, or even if they are believed, they're ridiculed. It's going to be really difficult for anybody to come forward in the future to say, this is something I've experienced with this person. And then for parents, not just parents, as long as you have a young child next to you, close to you, a niece, a friend's child, a neighbor's child, I think we all have to be responsible to kind of make sure they're okay, but most especially the parents. Parents need to openly have these discussions with their children. Let it be that a child has somebody they can go to, even if it's not a child, even if it's an adult living within your house. Let the conversation be going that if this thing is happening, you know, this is what you should be able to do, even in schools. Like, so out here, you know, in France, they have books for little children about, if this is happening to you, this is what you should do. There are labels on places where adults shouldn't touch you. They should have that basic education that if somebody touches you here, you can say no. And if they don't stop, this is who you go and tell. And these are the areas that nobody should touch you in, and things like that. So we need to have the education, and we just need to have that open conversation between parents and guardians and their children.
All right. So, I mean, just in wrapping up now, you know, in recent times, we've seen the Me Too hashtag, you know, trending on Twitter and I mean, so many social media platforms where people have openly come out now, talking about actresses, you know, coming out and they're about to come and speak about issues of molestations, how do we encourage people? Because, like you said, I mean, I think either you or Indy said earlier on, there is the issue of stigma, the society labeling you as, here or that. We also just last week or last 2 weeks, we also saw the mosque Me Too, where women, actually talked about being molested at the prayer ground. So, I mean, people are actually coming out, but it seems, I mean, we haven't really seen that happening in Nigeria. How do we go past that issue of, society labeling people who decide to take that bold step, being courageous and coming out?
Nigeria is a really difficult place to come out with experiences about molestation, abuse, and things like that. A lot of the time, people want to say, or people say, and then there's a weird reaction, or nothing happens. But I think, honestly, one of the places also that they need to be able to openly talk about these things are like churches and mosques, because a lot of Nigerians spend time in these places, and these are things that are hardly ever spoken about. And even if it's youth groups, discussions, family groups, whatever, or support groups, one person at a time, people should be able to have these discussions, and let's openly try to deal with the stigma. So we have a culture where, these things are supposed to be kept hidden. But I think it's going to take some radical people who are willing to talk about these things publicly, to take one for the team or something, and then hopefully society will begin to change. But I think unless we start to talk about it, anywhere in the world right now, it's not just Nigeria, people deal with these situations where they don't get the response that they need to help them, protect them, and to protect others around them. But this is the time where it's happening around the world, and Nigeria cannot be left behind. If we want to have a world where women feel safe, children feel safe to do what they need to do in this life to just get by, then these are discussions we need to start to have. And people should stop stigmatizing. That's one of the biggest problems. Stop blaming people, stop ridiculing them for going through such experiences, so that more people can come out, and then let there be support centers, whether it be from the church or even from the government. Just like she said, let it be prioritized that people can come out and talk about these things.
All right, very well. Indy, what do you say to that in closing?
Well, same thing. I think the stigma should belong to the perpetrators, not the victims. And please, let's try our best. I'm really glad that a lot of us, young women and men, are speaking up for these things that were considered no-go areas before. They are becoming more open. But I have a problem with people who tend to want to play devil's advocate. I think I should use this platform to discuss this. Whenever an issue pertaining rape or molestation, especially when it comes to women, come up, some people decide that, I've seen it on social media a lot, where, oh, let me play devil's advocate. What if her skirt was too short? Did she say no enough? And these things, when that fellow on social media said the thing about the 3-year-old girl, and everybody, including people who like to play devil's advocates, were acting shocked. I said, look, when you create doubts on other scenarios, you give people in youth speak, let me call it liver. You give them the liver, you give them the guts to push it further. There are sick people out here, and you give them the guts to push it, to come out bold with these things. So I've noticed right now on social media, if a girl just says, somebody said that something happened in somewhere with her sister, and they have taken the case, to the police, and immediately under, you could see people doing, are you sure your sister did not try seducing him? Are you sure this? Are you sure that? Tell us the full story. This is how you people, and it continues like this. There are no limits. So there are some things that, please, if we feel like, oh, I want to come out, and this is a no-go area for that. Rape is not a joking matter. And especially when you try to make it light like this, a lot of us young women, a lot of us women in this country have been molested, have been raped from childhood, even up to adulthood. When people are speaking in Hollywood and you're surprised that, oh, this woman too, oh, it could happen to you. Well, it's the same way for most of us too. And seeing these statements are very traumatic and make some people lock up. Not everyone is bold enough to come out despite this. So I would ask, please, that in our engagements with these issues, that common sense be applied. When somebody picks up the strength to come out, you should not start pushing burden of, are you lying on that person? We should be willing to listen to this person and get to the bottom of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you too very much indeed for your thoughts on this very contentious issue. You joined us from Abuja, Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory. Thank you once again. Mariam, you joined us from France, Toulouse precisely. Thank you as well for sharing your thoughts on this issue. But then we have to wrap it up on this note. For those of you watching via our YouTube stream, we do see all of you as well. Isioma, thank you for your comments. Eagle Kelvings as well, thank you for your comments. Bode Sani, thanks for your comments as well. And to the rest of you that I can continue with mentioning names. I mean, we're out of time and we have to go at this moment. But then that's how we'll wrap it up. And once again, it's a Google Plus Hangout for Channels Beam. And thank you for joining us once again. Bye for now.